the restriction of motorcycle riders on 5% out of our over 9,000 off the highway was a very, very tough and hard decision for the state government to make way back in 2012. Not just that, we had a law. We had a law backing up that decision. We have the Lagos traffic law. And then, imagine the kind of public opposition we faced. But convinced in our minds and based on the surveys that we have received, that was the best thing we should do for the city.
Finally, in the past years, 8 years, would you look back and remember a decision that you took that didn't go as planned? And can you tell us if there was such, what do you think accounted for the not doing that?
That's a very tricky one. In the last 8 years, certainly as government, there will be decisions we will take, we will be challenged. And just this morning, I was reading an article of Bloomberg by Michael Bloomberg, the 3-time mayor of New York. What he said was, clearly, we are not going to agree on most issues in terms of the government and the people, because certainly we cannot have 100% get it right at all times. And what he was saying is that we would certainly have hard choices to make and hard decisions to make that may not necessarily be popular by the people. But as leaders, if we have our conviction based on empirical facts, extreme data mining, then we should go for it. And his conclusion was that if out of 12 issues, you can agree with us, 9 out of the 12 issues, then we must be doing well. Then obviously he will cast his vote for that kind of government. But if out of 12 decision points, you are agreeing with us 12 times as well, then something must be wrong. You probably need to visit a psychiatrist. And that was what he was saying this morning, coincidentally. So clearly, I also have the task of a concurrent responsibility for managing the PPP policy of the government, public-private partnerships. And I'm sure one key issue that is in public domain is the issue of implementing toll charges in Nigeria. Recall that way back in 2005, 2006, thereabout, former President Obasanjo actually outrightly cancelled toll on all of Nigerian roads. Recall that way back in 2011, we have to lead the public advocacy to provide people with a complementary policy program for infrastructure development and acceleration, which led to the conceptualization of the 49.36 kilometer Etios-Lekki Express Road Road. The fact is, as government, let's think about it. There are only basically about 3 main sources to fund government activities in terms of our fiscal operations. And we'll talk about the popular 3 T's. The first one being taxes, direct taxes. The second one being transfers, like most states in Nigeria, Lagos not left out, heading to Abuja every month to share out of the national resources, statutory allocation. Although today, Lagos is the only state where we generate close to 70% of our fiscal resources out of internally generated revenue. That is taxes domiciled in the state. The next state to us is Rivers State, and they are probably anywhere between 25 and 30%. The third window for us is what you call tariffs. And these are based on user-based charges for using a service. Just like passing through an airport and you pay a small fee, for the maintenance of the airport. So that was something major for us and we needed to tackle it head on. Clearly, today, in the last 4 years, our budget in the state has been averaging about 500 billion naira, barely half a trillion. When the currency was good, that would deliver about $3.2 billion US. Today, where the currency is, your guess is as good as mine. That is any figure between 2 billion and 2.4 billion US dollars. So we are also faced with the headwind of currency exposure that is not helping us. And most of the infrastructure projects also have huge foreign content. Therefore, PPP as a policy trust became a major issue that we needed to push through and that we needed to convince people about. When we were about to launch the Lekki-Ikoyi Bridge, for example, we were faced with many challenges. The Ikoyi residents are worried about the ambience and the sanity of their environment. The Lekki residents, even though worried, but not as worried as the Ikoyi residents. Of course, when we conceptualized that bridge, it was meant to reduce congestion on the Etios-Lekki Express Road and ease up traffic nightmare on that corridor. We then look at it. The bridge was nearing completion. The residents' association were up in arms, discussing all sorts of issues. Again, we didn't go into a solution blindly. We commissioned CNS, RMS to conduct a survey for us in terms of users' expectation, willingness to pay, etc. So fixing the tariff, it was market-driven. It was the feedback we got from the citizens that we use in developing that. Not just that. If you also notice, the crash barriers that were implemented there were actually implemented a bit down the line into the construction. Reason is simple. The load-bearing capacity of that bridge can as well accommodate commercial buses. It can as well accommodate articulated trucks. But based on feedback from the citizens, key stakeholders on the corridor, we had to then restrict the use of the bridge only to vehicles and small buses, so that we do not have to bring in articulated trucks into the serene environment of Ikoyi on a day-to-day basis, 24/7. Same thing happened at the Lekki end of it. So for us, if I come back now to Lekki Express Road, yes, I'm sure you've also heard about the headwinds we faced in the implementation of that road project, especially during operation stage. The initial agreement, which was signed in 2006, provided for possibility of the concessionaire raising tariff in line with inflation, because of course they have raised project finance not just from Nigeria. Two international lenders are participating in that transaction, being AFDB as well as Standard Bank Group out of London, and then 6 local banks. So they needed to at least recover their investment and have a reasonable return on investment. Now, as government, it was impracticable for us to sell down the idea of increasing that tariff matched to inflation every quarter. That's one of the issues. The parameters on which the projects were based, the project fundamentals like exchange rate, like interest rates, were also such that if they had to pass through all of those costs into the project immediately, it would have become socially unacceptable for people to pay. And again, based on our surveys and feedback from the people, we had to necessarily intervene by buying back the equity interest in the concession to make it sustainable in the long term for all stakeholders. So a PPP project necessarily must not just be affordable for the concessionaire, it must be affordable for users, and it must be affordable for the grantor, which is the government, which is what we have done today. And also in response to feedback from the people, initially we had planned 3 toll plazas on that road, but today what we have got, we now have only 2 toll plazas left, and the third one, which was meant to be around the Lagos Business School, has now been cancelled as a policy decision of government. Thank you.
Especially coming from the BGC corridor into Victoria Island. Now we hear about all the good things that are going to be included in including an airport and a refinery and so on. But nobody is talking about an alternative road that will make its traffic better. For instance, we had so much story about the coastal road, but all they talk about that is that there was a 4 million bridge,
but we don't get very much out of it. We were trying to avoid when we have the power plants, but there's no gas pipelines to power gas to power plants. What would it be to help all those things there at the grid lock such that nothing moves? Maybe you could shed some insight on the road network that will make it viable to have those projects.
Like I said, as a state and as a government and administration, we base decisions on solid and hard data. In the state today, we have a transport master plan that has been conceptualized for intermodal transportation modes. On the light metro rail transit master plan, there are 7 corridors identified across the length and breadth of the city. We started out in 2009 with the concession launch for 2 of those projects. The first one is the Blue Line corridor, running from Marina via National Theatre into Mile 2 all the way to Okobomaiko. That is the east-west corridor of the state. Where I sit today, we practically completed close to 10 kilometers of rail tracks, 4 stations fully built, and we placed an order for the first set of trains that are expected before the end of the year. The second is the Red Line. The Red Line is meant to run from CMS via Ido on the existing National Railway corridor all the way to Agbado. It stretches about 31 kilometers with a spur to the international airport. Key challenge, we needed to share the right of way with the Nigerian Railway Corporation. We've been engaged with the federal government in various meetings in which I also participated, agreeing on terms and conditions of sharing that right of way. We had a technical committee set up. It was done and finished. As we speak, we have no consent on that corridor. So that stalls that aspect of the project. And of course, there are 5 other opportunities in that regard for the private sector to tap into. As you very well know in Nigeria, the private sector oftentimes will not readily latch into opportunities in the public sector space in terms of infrastructure, except they see the government, leading the pack. And we've seen that in telecoms. I mean, I come back from a deep knowledge of the telecom sector where I served as the Chief Treasury Officer of Econet into its days as Celtel. So, I mean, you know that, and that is what we're trying to do in that regard. On the waterways itself, Lagos, in terms of our land density, we are 3,577 square kilometers. It's the tiniest dot in Nigeria. Of that, 22% of it is water body. And we have engaged in serious infrastructure development on the waterways. We created a tripoda at Ikorodu. We have built a modern ferry terminal. At Osborn, we are nearing completion of a modern ferry terminal. At Badore, the modern ferry terminal is completed. The one at Mile 2 has been rehabilitated. Today, we have close to 200 operators on the waterways, but not in the scale and size that we envisage to bring people back onto maximizing the opportunities in the waterways, because that will also go a long way to reduce congestion. In this city, we implemented the very first bus rapid transit system on the continent. And in fact, countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, South Africa, Japan, in fact, have also come to learn from that experience. We first finished the Ojota to CMS corridor. We've done the one from Oshodi to CMS. We have opened up Yanopaja to Lasu. And we are now completing it from Mile 12 all the way to Ikorodu. So again, we are looking at such solutions to move people faster on mass transit to assist in moving people in the city. Talking more specifically about Lekki Corridor, I mean, Tabia's most of the questions are around Lekki Corridor. But I don't want the people in Nigeria, Okomaiko, in Agboru to feel left out. So I will address that quite frontally. Within the terms and conditions of the Lekki-Epe Expressway concession, Phase 2 of the project was meant to be a 20-kilometer coastal road that stretches from somewhere around the hotel there off Ahmadu Bello Way all the way to Abraham Adesoya. But one of the key requirements to build that road is actually the shoreline protection and a permanent shoreline protection. I'm sure if you you are a resident of the city and on that corridor, we've had severe coastal erosion occasioned by global phenomenon of climate change. We're a coastal city, so we're exposed to the challenges of rising sea level. At Kuramo water, we have seen that where the Atlantic Ocean submerged into the small creek around there, Kuramo waters. And what has happened is, if you do not complete the shoreline protection, there is no way that project can start. Not just that, that alignment is actually part of the federal government east-west road, expanded back from Niger Delta back into Lagos State. So the alignment is now protected by government all the way to the border with Ogun State at Odeomi. But what is uppermost is that you must find a cure to the challenge of coastal erosion, because we are not going to find smart money or project finance funding a 20-kilometer road that is susceptible to being wiped out by just one tidal event. So that is the challenge we are faced. But having said that, we are looking at possible alternatives. On the lagoon side, we also have a regional road alignment that runs from around Chevron into Ilubiri to connect Third Mainland Bridge right at the tip there. So we are looking at a variety of options. The good news is that today, for close to 50 years of the existence of the state, this is the first time in our history where we are going to have a government that is sane at state level and at the federal level. So we expect to see more interaction and more positive collaboration between the federal government of Nigeria and Lagos State in terms of bringing support to the residents of Lagos and overall improve the living standards and conditions of our people. I thank you very much.